Hello and welcome to the latest Packaging Europe podcast. Today I'm pleased to invite as our guest Daniel Friedmann, who has recently been announced as Solutum's new corporate director and board member. We've previously reported on Solutum's sustainable materials, and they actually made it to the finals in the climate category of our 2023 Sustainability Awards. So today I'm keen to hear Daniel's intentions on how to scale up the company's sustainable material on a global level. And I'm really keen to hear kind of the ins and outs of how this is achievable. But firstly, welcome, Daniel. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. And I'd really like to just start by, hearing a little bit about your background. How did you get into the packaging industry? What's your interest in sustainability? What's your new role at Solutum at the moment?
Sure. I started out in the space business, which sounds a little strange. I had a long career in the space business, and how it relates to what I'm doing now is in many ways. But one of the ways is that, our business was to watch the planet every day. We made the first Google Map images way back, and I watched all the environmental problems from climate change to plastic from space. And so that was one part. The other part is that we were always introducing new products and technologies that made things better. And I learned the hard way that the competition is not everybody else doing what I was trying to do, but it was the status quo. And that's definitely the case in the plastics business. I went from the space business into carbon capture and spent 6 years in direct air carbon capture. That brought me face to face with the whole environmental and CO2 and climate change and so on, and that whole industry, which is parallel to the environmental problems we have from plastic. And when I moved from that position, one of our board members in that company was also a Solutum board member, and he introduced me to Solutum, and I was hooked right away because the huge impact it can have.
That's really interesting to hear your background, actually, as in the packaging industry, a lot of people are veterans. They've kind of been in packaging for 20, 30 plus years. So that's interesting to hear that you've actually come from a different field. What's kind of your perspective on coming from a different field into packaging?
It has some of the same challenges and opportunities. Like I said before, our competition, the competition I face in introducing new products, has always been the status quo. And one of the first quotes I heard when I started helping out with Solutum from a customer was, "The best packaging is the one I already have."
Okay.
So that brought me right to home.
Brilliant. So you've kind of been in your role for a short period so far. What can you tell me about Solutum? What's their aim? What are the materials that they offer to the market at the moment?
Yeah, Solutum is quite an amazing situation. The company, until about a year ago, had spent many years in the lab trying to create a plastic-like material for all intents and purposes that performed like plastic or better, yet had good end-of-life scenarios, and in particular, good end-of-life scenarios in a managed environment, like where you live and where I lived, where there's collection, or there should be collection, and dealing with it at a municipal level, but more importantly, or as importantly, in an unmanaged environment where there is no collection, might not even be a garbage can or an incinerator, and it just ends in the environment. And this is a worldwide problem. Plastic use is increasing, and unfortunately, in the unmanaged, in the third world where it's unmanaged, And we need when I talk to the brands or anybody else, they don't want to have a different product in every country and running on different product running on every machine. We need a really ubiquitous solution that works for the world. And Solutum, from all I've been at this since late last year. As far as I can tell, has that solution, and I don't see anybody else that has that ubiquitous solution that can really deal with the problem.
That's really interesting to hear. And I'd really like to know, kind of, you're talking about the end of life of solutions. Is this kind of the main challenge that you see within the packaging industry for sustainability and materials such as Solutums?
Yeah, I open plastic packages every day, and I'm trying to avoid it dramatically since I got involved in this business. I never even noticed plastic, and now all I see is plastic when I go to the supermarket, and there I am, wherever I am with this. I don't know what to do with it. The flexible, I know what to do with a bottle, but the flexible packaging. I'll admit here that I open chocolate bars and candy bars and stuff. All the flexible packaging, half the time it blows away when you're trying to open it. It is a huge problem.
And kind of what are the main issues that you see in the area when it comes to these materials?
Well, I think that if you want to enter an established multi-billion, trillion-dollar industry, which plastics is, which is ubiquitous around the world, and has a lot of good things. We can concentrate on the end of life problem, but plastic has revolutionized medicine and our whole food distribution and so on. If you want to enter that industry, you have to have a product that works within the existing infrastructure. In other words, that the current compounders and converters and packaging machine manufacturers and all of those multi-billion-dollar infrastructure, which has already been invested on and people are working on their mostly polyethylene, that your material will work on that infrastructure. Otherwise you're into the electric car problem that you gotta switch the whole infrastructure, which is a longer process than I have time for. So the key thing that Sharon, our founder, kept in mind all the way through, which has been my success criteria for disrupting industries, has been to come up with a product that fits into the existing infrastructure, that you can put it in your machine tomorrow with hopefully a minute setup time, but at worst a few hours setup time, and you're up and running. And people are not saying, okay, well, I got to start again. I got to build a new factory. That's not a way to scale. And something that can go all over the world quickly in a business model where it can really get out there. And we, in addition to having the end of life qualities, we have the whole thing's been designed to work on machines. I was just at a demonstration with a potential partner, which has not been announced yet. And they switched from polyethylene to our material in 1 minute. I timed it. They switched the roll and they entered 3 numbers into their control panel, and the thing ran. Now it took us time to get there, but in terms of all their customers, the thousands of their machines out there, in terms of all their customers, that's how easy it's going to be, and that's how it has to be, in my experience, for things to really be able to scale up.
That's really interesting. And kind of how I'm kind of looking more from a marketing sort of angle, kind of how do you get across using this material to your customers, your clients, to the public? Kind of how do you get that understanding across?
Yeah, the jargon in the industry from a famous book is called Crossing the Chasm, and which kind of was invented by the guys that consulted with Apple in the early days. And it's pretty easy to get a lot of a lot of parties trying out your material because everybody's trying out everything. But from there to ending up in the supermarket, it's a difficult situation. So the approach, the tried and true approach for many industries, is to really focus down, instead of trying to work with everybody, really focus down on a few applications where one brings a significant advantage, and not just the end of life, because the nuts and bolts guys are trying to do a business. They got to package things, they got to deliver things that are fresh, they don't want their cost to increase, and so on. So we have spent a few months earlier this year working really hard on where do we bring a significant advantage, even if you don't want to talk end of life. And we've been trying to focus on those areas. Obviously, long term, we want to be ubiquitous, but at the beginning, we're trying to pick up areas where we're strong. And when you invent a new material, as the Solutum team has done, it is different from the existing material. It has things that it does better and things that it doesn't do as well. And when people are trying to create a package, they are looking for certain, you're looking for different things when you're packaging chocolate than when you're packaging coffee, than when you're packaging vegetables. And we need to find the places where we really shine, irrespective of the end of life. Of course, we always, are aware of the end of life situation.
So can it be applied across sort of market sectors, food, pharmaceuticals, beverage, like the different industry sectors? Can it be applied across all of those?
Yeah, we are focused on flexible packaging. So, really soft, because that's the part that people are having a very hard time recycling. Only about 1% of flexible packaging is recycled. And flexible packaging is used in many areas, but some areas are mostly about hard packaging. Our focus is food and pharmaceuticals, but we have inquiries and projects going on in agriculture. But our key focus and other places too. So yeah, it has very large applicability. There's no reason why almost anything that's in a flexible package couldn't. One day we worked into this, and that's just a current focus, but that's a big enough focus.
Of course. And are you able to give me kind of a view of kind of the scale that it's at the moment? What sort of numbers are we looking at? Kind of how many companies is it involved at the moment? What's kind of your goal for the next couple of years coming up?
Yeah, we are just entering the market now. We are actually not on a commercial product anywhere. We're in commercial trials, and we're in pre-commercial trials in different applications, but we're not yet in a commercial product, and that's just the phase that we're in. Them, we got the material working well, then we had to get it working well on existing machines, and we're now out there in both the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry, trying to get products onto the market being used every day. And we expect to achieve that by the end of this year. We expect to be out of commercial trials by the end of this year and be being used in a few areas. And then we have a plan, of course, to go from there in those areas and then other areas also. But we're right at the market entry kind of place right now.
And in kind of the original press release that was sent over to me, it kind of mentioned that you're looking towards having this on a global scale. What's kind of the time scale on doing this?
Yeah, our first most advanced trials are in Europe and in India. We expect the US to be kind of next after that. And the people we are working with, when I say Europe or India, that's headquarters. But they're quite multinational, which is by and large, if you look at most of the plastic packaging people that are around the world. So they are demanding a solution that works around the world and deals with their problems around the world. And our business model is to we're a technology and marketing company. We invent the technology, we make it work. We have a full facility in our headquarters that can go all the way to a finished product. Although that's not what we sell. We sell the compound, but we can go all the way to a finished product, so people can in days do trials with us on their about their finished products. Once we get that working, we go and we use existing compounders around the world as contract manufacturers to make our compound there. So we can quickly scale up, and then that compound goes into any converter pretty easily. I mean, obviously we have to spend some time with them, but it goes pretty easily. So our business model is not to build our own infrastructure. Our business model is to use the existing market infrastructure with this technology.
So that's really the key that you're telling me today. The key that I can take from this, that is using the existing infrastructure is kind of the solution. When it
that's
comes
the solution
to
for first you have to have a product that everybody wants. You have to convince everybody to want it. But normally I learned the hard way that you spend all your time thinking, what are the risks? Is the product really going to work? Is the customer going to be happy? Can we deliver on time? But the real risk, once you get past all that, is success. Okay, it's working now. Can we have hundreds of thousands of tons? Oops, I can't start. So we're setting up a worldwide set of compounders to deliver to our customers locally, because we don't want to be shipping stuff all over the place. Sometimes shipping is more expensive than the plastic. So exactly that's the scale up piece, that's the business model piece, but we still have to have the products that people want so we can actually scale up and develop those products.
And can you just tell me briefly kind of a little bit about the technology, the science behind this compound?
I'm the wrong guy for that. I have a scientific background, but I jumped into the whole strategy and marketing. But fundamentally, the approach has been to start with existing available materials. Also part of the scale up, because if you come out with a brilliant material that works on everybody's machine, but you have to take over half the world's food production to make your biomaterial or something. We don't have to do that. The assumption was that we'd work with readily available at volume anywhere in the world raw materials, and the approach right from the beginning was to combine existing materials to make something that was biodegradable and compostable, industrially compostable. I mean, it's too much plastic to be fooling around. You need an industrial composting situation. Biodegradable, because if it ends up in the environment, it has to disappear. So that was the focus, and at the same time, a material that would have the properties that you need to make a package. It has to be strong enough. It has to have an oxygen barrier if you're going to keep food fresh. And so on. So I'm just the wrong guy to tell you that the deep science about it. I'm a physics guy anyway, not a chemistry. But I tell you, I'm been in the shop with the material, and it's amazing.
And are you able to tell me? So you mentioned that it's biodegradable. How kind of what time scale is on its biodegradability?
The trick with biodegradable is that it doesn't have a particularly strong time scale sorted out there. But the best way to answer your question is that we are certified for industrial composting, and that has a very specific set of measurements. A lot of people say they're biodegradable. I mean, well, yeah, if I have 1,000 years, ours is biodegradable pretty quickly. But the best answer for you is that industrial composting standards by TÜV in Austria, we pass those, which is a much stricter test than biodegradability. Obviously, when you're not industrial composting, you're not at a higher temperature, and you're not being stirred, you're slower to biodegrade. But we're still talking months instead of tens and hundreds of years for biodegrading. It depends.
That's really good to clarify that, yeah, because we do find kind of in the area of biodegradability, you do get quite a lot of sort of greenwashing and kind of claims that can't always be verified. So it's good to hear that.
Yeah, and the other key point, which is dramatic from my perspective, is that to biodegrade or compost in soil with microbes and so on and so forth is one thing. But unfortunately, most of the plastic ends up in a nice cold river somewhere and floats out to the ocean. We biodegrade in water.
Okay.
We actually biodegrade in water.
Okay. So I'd like to summarize with kind of what your goals are for the next few years. What's kind of your vision for Solutum? Why are you passionate about this particular material?
Well, I'll start with the vision. Our vision is to find a half a dozen niches where we're large, but still niches where we're really strong, and we offer a commercial advantage in addition to the end of life advantage, so that the consumer can start using our product and say, hey, here's a product that has a good end of life. Now, in other places where we might be a little less commercially competitive with the standard, but we can still have the compostable and biodegradable, and get pushed into that. So our focus right now is to we have the targets right now. We're working through them. We want to enter the market. We want to enter the market in the large places, Europe, North America, Asia, and concurrent with that, establish our local partners there to produce locally the compound, so that we can scale up and be more competitive. And so that's really our focus on the next 2 or 3 years, and we're hoping after that the consumer will say, well, there's a solution to this problem. Why isn't everybody using it? And help pull us through on the areas where we're less of a perfect fit commercially. I'm passionate for many reasons, but the picture always in my mind, we have some of the best sea kayaking in the world in the west coast of Canada. And I try to go sea kayaking every year for a week, and often you don't see a single person in the week that you're out there, but you see plastic everywhere, more than in our local beaches, because nobody's cleaning it up.
That's sad.
It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. Yeah, it's sad, and the wildlife is trapped in it. Obviously, we're disturbed by it. We can't keep putting this plastic out there.
Thank you. Well, thank you for joining me today. And is there anything that you think we haven't covered in our chat today at all?
I think that the key thing is the consumer. The consumer has immense power. The young generation has immense power. I take responsibility for having my parents quit smoking way back, and even for driving my mother crazy about fur coats, which have all but extinct now, as far as I can tell. The consumer, I am told by the packaging, this is not my quote, by the packaging industry, the number one job of packaging is to attract the consumer, how it looks. The second job is to protect the product, whether it be a pharmaceutical or food. And we as consumers have got to make number one to end up with a package that doesn't destroy the world. Number two, to protect the product. And if it doesn't look as shiny and as pretty, although we can make our product look as shiny and as pretty, others can't, but it doesn't matter. We need everybody out there. We have to be attracted to compostable, not to bright and shiny. And if the consumer pulls that through, they will switch this very quickly. To the many people that are creating, alternate solutions to the problem. I think that's the key. I've just been woken up to that by getting involved in this. But and I've changed my buying habits. But we need everybody to do it.
Thank you so much for sharing with me today and for joining us on our weekly podcast. It's been really interesting to hear your point of view on this. And if you would like to continue the conversation, please yourself and our audience join us in November 12th and 13th in Amsterdam for the Sustainable Packaging Summit, where we will be having much more conversations just like this today. Thank you so much.
Great, and thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you.